Nearby, Panglima Nurhalida, Lida Kesuma slammed her fist into a control node, rerouting power from a failing shield into a collapsing evacuation corridor.
Civilians first!
She barked, voice raw.
Carry the elders, don't argue with them.
An explosion threw 3 soldiers off their feet. Lida dragged one up herself, hands shaking not with fear, but fury. She looked up once, saw Arif standing unmoved amid the chaos, and understood. This was not a battle they were meant to win. At the far end of the gate, shadows surged again, this time heavier, coordinated. A shadow lieutenant raised its claw and lost its head. King Elion stepped into the breach like a descending judgment, spear burning so bright it scorched the air. He did not slow. He did not speak. He simply ended what stood before him. When the line steadied, he turned slightly just enough to see the mortals holding formation behind fractured barriers. For a heartbeat, his gaze met Arif's. No words passed between them. None were needed. Elion turned back to the horde. The gate held. Smoke rolled thick across Gate 9. Bodies shadow and otherwise littered the ground. Arif wiped blood from his blade, breathing measured, eyes already scanning for the next break. Leda stepped beside him, voice lowered.
Panglima, casualties are mounting.
Arif nodded once.
Good,
He said quietly.
that means they're not reaching the children.
Leda swallowed hard. She looked at him then, not as a commander, but as someone who suddenly understood what survival would cost. The Veilgate flared again, and the shadows screamed an answer. From his shattered tower, Vaelthrix watched the threads of battle twist and snap. Silver light flared from pylons. Screams echoed from the Veilgates. Elite troops, Bunians, veterans, tideward warriors, even humans held lines that should have crumbled. And still, she kept them alive. He narrowed his molten eyes. Her, the lock, the anchor, the key. Merithiel. Every pulse from the pylons hummed in tandem with her heartbeat. Every desperate calculation, every strain of will she was holding them together. Without her, the legions would falter, the civilians would die, the world would be sundered. Vaelthrix leaned forward, claws tapping against jagged obsidian. A slow, cold smile spread across his face.
So,
He murmured, low and cruel.
the key is not some blade, not a king, not even the legions. It's her.
Then, like a predator adjusting its prey, he began to move. The shadows changed tactics. No longer just waves, no longer mere assaults against pylons and gates. They coordinated, split and swarmed. The wyverns dove lower, clawing for civilians, dragging anything that moved. Corrupted beasts, led by Nyrexa herself, pressed along riverbeds and shallow canals. Maubern packs formed living walls, herding fleeing refugees like cattle toward collapsing arches. Vaelthrix's generals, those who survived Sugo's demise, were now freed to strike individually, testing the limits of the human mortals and elven defenses. He whispered again, almost to himself.
Let us see how long she can stay busy.
Far across the battlefield, Merithiel's senses stretched like threads in the wind. 2 more pylons, 16 available gates, thousands of souls on the line. Every second of delay bought by warriors unseen. Every death avoided carried on the backs of those who volunteered to hold the line. A chill ran through her chest. Her hands, bound to the second pylon, trembled not with fear, but with grief-laden rage. She felt each surge of energy, each weakening rune, each cry from the front lines.
Every second counts. Every second, I am the difference between life and death.
Her mouth pressed into a thin line. She did not weep. She could not. But her heart ached. The key, she was the key. And the weight of that truth burned hotter than the firestorm around her. Through smoke and ash, she glimpsed the mortals' formations holding. Their gemstone shields shimmered, pulsing with Veil-sourced energy they had barely mastered. Panglima Arif rotated units, placing himself at the sharpest point. Lita countered breaches with quick hands, rerouting power, moving where she was needed most. They were not elves, not Bunians, not kings, but they were alive. And in that, they became a weapon more potent than brute force. Merithiel could feel it, could sense it. Even in her grief, even in the strain, even in the fury, a single thought burned clear. I am not alone. And if I must die, I will die holding every second of this life together. Across the 18 Veilgates, chaos reigned. Screams rose in waves, mingling with the flapping of wyvern wings and the groans of collapsing stone. The civilians poured through the portals, some stumbling, some carried on shoulders, all fleeing a fate too cruel to name. And yet, at each gate, a force held. Bunian veterans of centuries, umbral blades, bloodroot berserkers, royal veil guard, each a living wall. They moved with precision, with discipline, with the kind of courage that only comes from facing death, so often that it becomes routine. King Elion was everywhere the line threatened to crack. Not alone, though his presence seemed that way. At Gate 7, he drove a Maubern through 3 of its pathmates, letting the creature's momentum smash a group of shadow hounds into the dust. At Gate 9, he planted his spear into the earth, the burning tip slicing through a corrupted wyvern before it could strike a fleeing elder. Around him, veterans of the Skyward and Tideward legions moved as extensions of his will. The Tideward brought up biofused beast guardians to block river crossings, while Skyward engineers and sharpshooters rained precise fire down on the advancing shadows. Even the bloodroot berserkers, normally reserved for brute combat, formed protective walls around the elderly and children. Every gate became a theater of desperate, glorious resistance.
King Elion, they...
One young soldier began to shout.
They will not pass.
The king interrupted, voice low, icy, terrifying.
Not while I still breathe.
Repeating the same mantra. And he was not bluffing. Every strike he landed, every shield that blocked, every veteran who fell beside him, formed an intricate web of survival. The civilians moved as fast as humanly possible through collapsing portals, but it was the quality of the defenders that kept them alive. Here, the line held, not through numbers, but through steel, willpower, and sacrifice. The gate trembled under the weight of endless assault. Shadows surged like a black tide, spilling over walls, clawing at gates, biting, snapping, howling. Every breath of air seemed laced with despair, but the defenders did not yield. Panglima Arif Surandaya stood at the center, scarred and resolute, the tip of his sword catching what little light filtered through the smoke. Beside him, Panglima led a Kesuma barked orders, her voice sharp, unwavering, even as exhaustion tugged at her limbs. They moved as one, turning desperation into deadly efficiency. Wave after wave crashed against them. Shadows fell by dozens, then hundreds, and still the gate held. Arif's armor was scorched, his blade nicked and dented, but his stance never wavered. His eyes swept the battlefield, calculating, predicting, commanding. Every swing, every step, every breath was a testament to the countless lives he bore on his shoulders. Finally, silence fell. The last of the immediate wave had been cut down, torn apart, or driven back. For a heartbeat, the defenders allowed themselves a ragged inhalation of air, shoulders heaving, eyes wide. They had survived, but survival was only a prelude. A shadow moved above the shattered towers, massive and impossibly dark. The clouds twisted unnaturally, and then he stepped forward. Vaelthrix Morgrath, Apostle of Oblivion, the living terror behind the invasion. He stood atop the rubble, cracked obsidian skin glowing with molten fissures, eyes smoldering with amusement. He spread his arms wide, as if the world itself were his stage. His grin was slow, deliberate, and terrifying in its certainty.
Bravo.
He murmured, voice rolling like distant thunder.
I see you've done well.
But every light must die. Arif's hand tightened on his sword. He recognized the moment, the calm before the storm, the signal that death itself was marching forward. Around him, veterans and elite units readied themselves. Behind them, the civilians, though protected by distance and structure, shivered at the aura of doom that radiated from Vaelthrix. No wave of shadows, no horde of beasts, no desperate enemy had ever felt like this. Vaelthrix stepped closer, each movement unnervingly calm, yet weighted with the power to annihilate. His grin widened. Every swing of his clawed fingers seemed to warp the air itself, as though the shadows obeyed his will before it was spoken. Arif's chest rose and fell with controlled breath. He shifted his stance, calling his battalion to defensive rhythm.
Hold the line.
He ordered, voice low but commanding.
Do not falter. For every life behind this gate, we bleed, we fight, and we stand. Even if we fall, we buy time. Time for them to live.
Vaelthrix tilted his head, the molten cracks in his skin glinting under the firelight.
A noble sentiment.
He said softly, almost kindly.
And yet, noble sentiments are the first to break.
The defenders braced. Arif's teeth clenched. In that instant, every eye, every heart, every sword and shield on that gate readied for the storm that was about to descend. And for the first time, the survivors understood the true meaning of terror. That no victory is permanent when the Apostle of Oblivion himself has chosen his prey. Arif saw at the moment Vaelthrix descended. Not fear, not dread. Finality. The shadows did not surge toward the gate anymore, they leaned toward him, as if the world itself had shifted its weight. Arif's gaze slid past the Apostle, past the ruined towers, to the refugees streaming between fractured lines of defense. Too many, too slow, too exposed. He turned to Panglima and leaned close, his voice nearly lost beneath the roar of battle. Her eyes widened.
No,
She breathed.
that won't.
It must.
Arif said quietly. She shook her head once, sharp and desperate.
That's impossible.
So is holding this gate.
Silence stretched between them, heavy as iron. The sounds of war pressed in. But for a heartbeat, only the two of them existed. Arif straightened slightly.
Do you comply with my orders, Panglima?
Lida's jaw trembled. She looked past him, at the battalion, at the shields already scarred and cracked, at soldiers who had followed Arif through wars they were never meant to survive. Then she looked at the refugees, faces streaked with ash and terror, clinging to one another as they ran. Her shoulders squared.
Yes,
She said hoarsely.
I comply.
Arif nodded once. He turned and raised his blade.
Those who will move with Panglima leader.
He called, voice carrying cleanly across the chaos.
Form up civilian protection doctrine. Full escort.
There was no hesitation. A third of the battalion broke from the line immediately. Veterans, shield bearers, medics, rearguard specialists, falling into formation around the refugees with practiced precision. Arif did not watch them go. He lifted his spear and faced forward.
Those who remain.
He said evenly.
Hold!
Shields locked. Spears braced. The line closed. Through smoke and flame, Vaelthrix watched the formation settle with faint, almost curious interest. Lida vanished into the tide of fleeing civilians. Arif took a breath, steady and measured. This is sufficient,
Hold.
he ordered, and the battalion did.